Hello everyone, it is time for another Master Guide installment. Today we're talking about the Clarent Blade. It just got a buff in the last patch, and now we have a little more of a slow with 1 stack, a little more silence with 2 stacks, and a little more damage with 3 stacks. Roughly a 12% buff, but keep in mind, this comes on the tail end of multiple nerfs to the sword tree. So swords are not in the best place right now in general, but Clarent Blades are especially fun and versatile and pretty strong, especially with the right gear sets. So I'm going to get you hooked up here. Let's start off right away. You're going to want to make sure your Q is Heroic Strike. For solo content, you're never going to use Heroic Cleave, always Heroic Strike. It gives you a dash, damage, and a stack, which will empower your further abilities. Now for your W slot, this weapon is very versatile. You have a lot of options. I default to Blade Cyclone. This is going to give you the most damage with the Q slot, especially if you have 1 stack. You always want to use this. You want to have at least 1 stack so that you consume that stack and get the bonus damage. If you do, it does damage 3 times, 287 times 3, almost 900 damage on a 12-second cooldown. Here's the animation. It also gives you a little bit of mobility, and it looks kind of cool. So yeah, 12-second cooldown, lots of damage. Just make sure you have at least 1 stack. But we have other options. Interrupt can be good. For whatever reason, in this meta, I've been seeing a lot of Boltcaster. So Boltcaster, you have no hope of winning that fight. They will always outdamage you unless you interrupt their damage, specifically their E. So interrupt allows you to do that, and then you almost insta-win the fight. It does damage, interrupts, and increases your auto attack damage. That can be very, very good against certain matchups, especially Boltcaster. Anything that has a very strong E that is interruptible, go ahead and bust out the interrupt. Otherwise, just default to Blade Cyclone. Splitting Slash used to be the go-to. It was nerfed once, if not twice. Now it does not deal nearly as much damage. It does give you some catch, but it does about half damage. So you're only getting 500 damage instead of 900 on a 15-second cooldown instead of 12-second cooldown. So you pretty much won't see people taking this very often anymore if they really know what they're doing. The other options, Hamstring, it's pretty good. 10-second cooldown, it gives you damage and good damage and extra mobility on just a 10-second cooldown. This is more of an advanced option. I don't use it much. You're still going to do more damage with Blade Cyclone anyways, so probably just default to that. You're never going to use this really outside of maybe Corrupted Dungeons. I'm not even going to talk about that. And Iron Will also. You're not going to use that solo. That's for ZVZ, just to quickly get in, deal your damage, and get out. We covered the solo options. Your go-to is going to be Blade Cyclone for maximum damage. Now let's talk about the E. There is some nuance here, because the amount of stacks you have determines the additional effect beyond the initial damage. With 1 heroic charge, you get a slow for 4 seconds that goes along with the damage. This can be clutch for chasing down a low HP opponent or for building space if you happen to be losing a fight. Otherwise, at 2 charges, you get a silence. This can be useful at the end of a fight where like the next person that has a strong ability wins. Quickly silence them for 4 seconds and you win the fight. But really, you're trying to get your 3 charges for the extra damage. This is a 5.1. If you have 3 charges and use your E, it's going to be, 700 plus 650, 1350 damage? That's crazy on a 15-second cooldown, and your range is bonkers, 20 meters. However, that's a very slow projectile, so at long distances, it can be very difficult to land, especially if your opponent is decent and they know what Clarent Blade does and how slow it is. They're going to be looking to dodge that, so if they're much further than 6 or 8 meters, it can be difficult to land. So just keep that in mind. Try to stay close to them if you're going to be throwing that E. For passive, Deep Cuts. This is going to give you extra damage over 1.5 seconds every 4 auto attacks. And sometimes that can be the difference between killing someone through undead or not. so I always go deep cuts. There are other good options. The damage resistance every 5 auto attacks, that can be super clutch and spare you a lot of damage, but this more situational. This is more reliable, I would say. Very reliable. Alright, let's talk about helmet slots. I always default to Guardian Helmet. This makes certain fights just incredibly easy, especially one-handed curse, or if you save it until you're low HP against like a fire staff or something. Below 40% health, you get a 1400 HP shield. That can be completely game-changing, but really it just enables you to take really obnoxious fights that you normally wouldn't be able to, like one-handed curse. But it's also versatile. You can use this in PvE against mobs. It never goes to waste. It's useful in every fight, and I just like it. This is my number one choice pretty much with any build. This would be an S tier option. Another S tier option is Fiend Cowl. More and more things need purged in this game, I feel like. It's incredibly useful. Point and click, can't miss it. 40-second cooldown. You purge any buff that your opponent has. This can be the difference between, winning a fight but not getting the kill and, purging their boots and closing that kill. It's crucial, and sometimes you absolutely just need the purge. Other options would be Stalker Hood. This synergizes very well with your E. If you're going to be dropping that 3-stack E for 1500 damage, go ahead and proc your Stalker Hood beforehand. Only 15-second cooldown. Gives you 15% extra damage. And especially in the mist these days where everyone with decent gear is running Undead Cape, it'll reveal invisible enemies and it can counter the Undead Cape. So this also is probably an S tier option right up there with Guardian Helm and Fiend Cowl because it synergizes so well with your Clarent Blade. And if you play it right or you're lucky enough and they're below 50% health, it reduces their damage resistances by over 100 for 4 seconds. That's going to improve your damage by like 50%. That's crazy. You could be, it's crazy if used appropriately with a little bit of luck. Another option, Spectre Hood. This is going to reset your chest slot. Our default is going to be a Mercenary Jacket, which gives you almost 800 healing. If you get fully procced twice with your Spectre Hood, that's crazy amounts of healing. Your opponent should not allow you to do that, but if you do, it's hard to lose that fight. The obvious drawback here is it has a half-second cast time, and it just feels clunky. I don't really like it. I've never really used this item. It can be clutch, but it's also very expensive. The artifacts are expensive, so the item itself is very expensive. If you're willing to field the cost, it can be very good. But really, I think one of these three options are going to be your best. Now, a B tier option would be a Mercenary Hood. This is going to give you a slow, some damage, soft defensive. It decreases the damage dealt by your opponent by 30% for 4 seconds and interrupts spell casting. So, this can be very useful, again, against a bolt caster or something that has an interruptible high damage E. You can run Howl to interrupt the Q and interrupt to interrupt the E, and they just deal no damage. You would insta-win that fight. And you have more mobility. You literally insta-win. That's an option, but you're usually not going to have this anyway, so you'll be defaulting to one of the better options. So that's it for the helmet slots. Chest slot. We already talked about default option, Mercenary Jacket. Best in slot, however, it can be difficult to get fully procced against a kite heavy weapon like Frost or Badon or any kind of a bow. So just keep that in mind. It's also weak to purge. It has a long cooldown, 1 minute cooldown, and it can be purged. So just keep that in mind. Really, if you ask me, the only other viable option would be something like a Spectre Jacket or Assassin Jacket with Inferno Shield. It's going to give you damage resistance, boost, and reflex damage for 8 seconds. That's a long time. But most of the E's no longer are reflectable, so the reflect value is kind of lost. You're mostly just doing it for the damage resistance. But also keep in mind, 34% damage bonus here versus 24 on a Mercenary Jacket. So if you're going to use Inferno Shield, don't use it on a Merc Jacket. You're going to want either Spectre Jacket or Assassin. Next up, let's talk about the offhand because specifically with Clarent Blade, it synergizes very well with Moisac. You never have mana issues because everything is such low mana cost. 10 on the Q, 30 on the W, 67 on the E, but you're forced to wait 15 seconds or wait for stacks, so you're just never low on mana. So you may as well take advantage of the attack damage bonus, and then this energy cost reduction, negative 16%, it's negligible. You just don't have to worry about it because it's not a factor. So that's specific to the Clarent Blade because it's so low mana, and I like to take advantage of that with this weapon. Otherwise, you're probably looking at a Mistcaller. These are both, I would say, S-tier options. You can make up for the lost damage by possibly getting another rotation in on your weapon. And then also, you would have more ability along with that, with the Mistcaller, because you get just straight up cooldown reduction. Torch is an option, but this is more of an A or B tier option. You get cooldown and auto attack speed. You do use a lot of auto attacks with this weapon, so you get full use out of it, but you're still going to be lacking some damage overall, especially if you're going to be poking. So I would recommend Moisac for this special case or Mistcaller. For the cape, I always recommend Thetford. It's a lot of damage on a 15-second cooldown, hard to replace. I mean, something like a Martlock cape can be pretty useful against something like a curse or a fire in certain situations, but for the most part, you want the damage that Thetford cape provides. Excuse me. Undead cape. Ooh, I forgot that. I forgot to bring one, but if you're going to be using a more high tier, 8.3 or even T8 or higher, you're probably going to be rocking Undead cape. That's going to give you a lot of survivability and just it makes your whole experience a lot more forgiving because it turns you invisible for either 5 or 6 seconds and allows you to escape. And you can use your boots or anything. It doesn't take you out of invisibility. So Undead is an option. Otherwise, your default is probably Thetford cape. Now for the boot slot, just use any boots. Anything in the boot tree, you're going to be defaulting to Rejuvenating Sprint. With Demon Boots specifically, you have the option to go Vengeful Sprint. It was nerfed recently. It used to be OP, oppressive, very annoying, must purge. Now it's only annoying at very low health, and it only gives a marginal benefit compared to Rejuvenating Sprint, but you lose the healing, even though the healing is just, like 5% of your health over 5 seconds. But it is an option. So situationally, it can be very useful. You'll see, like, One Hand Curse use it a lot because sometimes they have to close the gap to get that second E off because that determines whether they win or lose. That's a situation where Vengeful Sprint is useful, but for us with Clarent, it's better to just default to Rejuvenating Sprint. Now let's look at the food. I usually default to Beef Stew. It gives you extra damage, but this weapon utilizes cooldown reduction very, very well. So you could use an omelet, or an even better option would be Dead Water Eel Stew, or any kind of eel stew that's going to give you extra damage and extra cooldown. Clarent uses that food very well. Pyramid Snapper is kind of meta for anyone using high tier. It just gives you crazy amounts of health and lifesteal, but of course you're losing damage and cooldown. And then if you just want pure healing, Roast Pork is an option. It's going to give you, 7.1 is going to give you over 10% healing, and that is pretty useful. For the potion slot, pretty much want to use Healing Potion. In solo environment, you need healing. Healing Potion is a must. For ganking, you're going to be using poison or something else, but I'm really giving you this guide for mists, solo open world experiences. You're going to want Healing Potion. It gives you 18% with a T6, 20% with a 6.1, and that's probably what you're going to be using. And that pretty much wraps up our gear. If you guys have any questions on gear viability or other options that I didn't mention, feel free to ask me in the comments section, but that pretty much sums everything up. Next, there's a very specific combo that you need to use with this weapon, so let's go ahead and cover that. That's going to allow you to maximize your damage. Alrighty y'all, let's take a look at the basic combo. It's going to be the same combo whether you're doing PvP or PvE, so I'm just going to show you on some mobs. If you want to win fights with this weapon, you have to maximize your damage. The way you do that is with this combo. And it has to be specific because basically, all right, so we're going to go E, Q, W, auto. That's it. What this does is it puts the E on cooldown, 15 seconds. It gets our single charge to empower our W, and then procs our Thetford Cape. This weapon's very bursty. Will almost kill these mobs right off the bat. There'll just be a little cleanup. If you're doing the basic combo correctly, it'll look like this. Almost killed him right off the bat. It'll also smack your opponent pretty hard in a PvP situation, and it's very good. But the reason why this is important is because to get you either want to E usually on 0, 1, or 3 stacks. Eing initially on 0 stacks, it gets the initial 700 damage, puts you on a cooldown. Then you need 4 stacks to get to the 3 stack damage, which is your ultimate goal. However, the cooldown on your Q is 3 seconds. If you need 4 stacks, because you're going to consume 1 with your W, and you need 3 for max damage, you need a total of 4 stacks. That takes a minimum of 12 seconds. So by the time you have your stacks, your E is back off cooldown, and that is going to, over the long term, maximize your damage. That's why you always, always, always lead with your E, follow up with the rest of the combo, and then proceed with the rest of the fight. Alright, let's take a look at how this plays out in actual PvP. This is a fight from literally 30 seconds ago. Just wrapped up this fight. This guy ratted me in this camp over here, and then I got ratted by a second guy, 6.2 Daybreaker. I killed him. Now the Battleaxe that ratted me initially is over here chilling, guarding the body. So I'm going to go kill him as well. He's a little bit higher IP, so that's why I'm going to bust out my OC. That's the body. I'm not going to take it yet in case I lose the fight. But alright, so there we open with the E. So you see, open with the E, Q, W. Now look, it's very bursty. We're winning. We're winning this fight. Alright. It's his turn basically to retaliate, try to even the odds. So as he's popping his W damage, I pop Guardian Helmet. Now we're trying to get our 3 stacks for the second E. That's basically the whole point of this fight after we get our initial burst combo off. We both have Bloodlust, so that's even. The builds are pretty even. Battleaxe is a very, very strong weapon, so this is a good showcase for Clarent because ultimately we have to outdamage them here, and that's what we're able to do with this Moisac build. So we hit the double E that did massive damage, and now we're just whittling them down. Final W, boom. We get to claim all of our loot that we worked so hard for. Alright, here's another look for you. This is Clarent Blade versus Clarent. I have Purge. He has Guardian Helm. So this will be a little bit of a different fight here. I go ahead and just throw an E. Try to get a little poke. Success. And so I just engage off of that. OC engage. Now one of us, this is awkward, one of us is DC'ing here. Soft DC'ing anyways. I pop his cape, but because we're DC'ing, normally I would purge that. I just walk away. I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. But we end up re-engaging and finishing the fight. It's a good thing I saved purge because it's impactful here in just a moment. Lead with the E. I'm not close enough to do the rest of the combo. That's fine. Alright, so he is popping his mercenary jacket. I purge as soon as I possibly can. And that is the determining factor in this fight. I end up throwing an E with just 2 stacks. Silences him. That was a mistake. I did not intend to do that. I thought I had 3 stacks. But because I'm still proccing mercenary jacket and his was purged, that makes a big difference, and it ends up determining the outcome of this fight. Even though he gets his 3 stack E off. So yeah, that's a testament to the strength of Purge and the weakness of this build to Purge. Alright, normally at this point in the video, I start going over priority matchups and which matchups to avoid. However, I have a Battleaxe guide. Battleaxe is my main weapon of choice. I have a very good video where I go in depth, deep dive into Battleaxe mechanics and priority matchups and fights to avoid. The priority matchups for Clarent and Battleaxe are exactly the same. They're both bruisers, similar playstyle, so I'm going to refer you to my Battleaxe video. Link is in the description. Go to 13 minutes and 48 seconds for priority matchups, 21 minutes and 42 seconds for the matchups to avoid. This will help you determine, before even starting the fight, which matchups you should take, which ones you should avoid. It's going to save you a lot of deaths and specifically help you do better against certain weapons, certain gear, certain matchups. So I highly recommend you take a look at that. There's a lot of valuable information there. For the rest of this video, I'm just going to leave you a few clips to observe and learn from. And yeah, I hope you found the video useful. That's always my goal, to just try to shine a light on some of the best builds in Albion and bring them to the community. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments. I always love answering those comments. And if you have any feedback, feel free to leave a like and some feedback. Anyways, I'll get you guys in the next video. Take care for now.
Well, we've already got more of that confirmation stagflation data that came out this week. Yesterday, we got the Dallas Fed Manufacturing Survey, which in January was actually a positive 14.1, and it collapsed to a negative 8.3. That is a big drop. The production index went from 12.2 down to negative 9.1. But the news that came out today, I think, was even more worrisome for the markets, and that was February consumer confidence, which collapsed. They were expecting 103 from an upwardly revised 105.3 in January, making the decline to 98.3 that much bigger. It's the biggest decline in this survey in over 3 years. So a big drop, and the main reason for the loss of confidence is inflation.